Sarah Mitchell's hands trembled as she carried the breakfast tray down the marble hallway of the Montgomery estate, her worn sneakers squeaking against imported Italian floors that cost more than she'd earned in her entire life. The waitress uniform she'd refused to give up looked absurdly out of place against the Versailles-level luxury surrounding her, unless fate had a cruel sense of humor. 6 months ago, she would have never imagined herself here, living in a mansion, caring for a teenager she barely knew, working for a man whose very presence made her heart race with confusion and something she wasn't ready to name. But what she didn't know was that the choice she'd made to help this family would soon cost her everything she held dear, forcing her to confront a devastating secret that connected her to these people in ways she never could have imagined. A secret that would make her question everything. The weight of a promise she didn't know she'd made, built on a tragedy that destroyed her first life. Before we dive into how a widowed waitress with nothing became the miracle this broken family desperately needed, hit that like button and tell me in the comments. Have you ever helped someone who changed your life more than you changed theirs? Also, let us know what city you are watching from. The cracked linoleum beneath Sarah Mitchell's feet told the story of Lou's Diner better than any review could. 30 years of wear, patched in spots, giving way in others. It was 5:47 a.m., and Sarah was already 4 hours into her shift, the ancient coffee maker hissing behind her like it might finally give up the ghost today. The smell of grease had embedded itself into everything. The walls, the menus, her uniform, probably her skin. After 8 months of double shifts, she'd stopped noticing. Double shift number 127. Sarah kept count because numbers were concrete, manageable, unlike everything else in her life since David died. Her worn sneakers squeaked as she moved between tables, the left one developing a hole she couldn't afford to fix yet. She counted tips in her head while refilling coffee for the construction workers at table 6. $43.50 so far. Rent was due in 4 days. She was still $340 short. The coffee stain on her uniform mocked her from just below her name tag. She tried everything to get it out, but it had settled in permanently, like her grief. Her lower back ached from standing 14 hours yesterday, a dull throb that had become as familiar as breathing. "Sarah, are you okay?" Diane asked from behind the counter, her motherly concern showing through. "I'm fine, really," Sarah deflected automatically, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Pride was expensive, but it was all she had left of who she used to be. In her apron pocket, medical debt collector letters crinkled every time she moved. She'd stopped opening them. The numbers were too big, too impossible, too much like drowning in slow motion. Her phone buzzed. She glanced at it during a rare lull. A voicemail from this morning that she'd saved. Emma's 7-year-old voice, recorded before Mrs. Chen picked her up from their apartment. "Love you, Mommy. Don't work too hard." Sarah's throat tightened. She couldn't afford to cry at work. Mrs. Chen watched Emma most mornings now, had done so for 8 months without ever asking for the full payment Sarah owed her. Another debt Sarah carried. Another kindness she couldn't repay. Emma was at the neighbor's house more than their own apartment these days. What kind of mother did that make her? The kind trying to survive, she reminded herself. The kind doing whatever took. During her bathroom break, Sarah pulled out her phone's calculator app and did the math she'd already done 50 times. After rent, she'd have $87 for food, utilities, and everything else until next payday in 2 weeks. Emma needed new shoes. Her toes were cramping in the old ones. The electricity bill was overdue. The final notice had come yesterday. Sarah stared at her reflection in the bathroom mirror. 32 years old, looking 40. Dark circles under her eyes that makeup couldn't hide anymore. Hair pulled back in a ponytail because she couldn't afford a haircut. When had she become this person? But then she thought of David in that hospital bed. The way he'd held her hand even when the pain made him shake. The way he'd smiled at her right up until the end, trying to make her believe everything would be okay even when they both knew it wouldn't. "I'm still here," she whispered to her reflection. Still standing. That has to count for something. She smoothed her uniform, checked that the order pad was in her pocket, and walked back out to the floor. Table 9 needed their check. The coffee maker needed refilling. Life needed living, even when you were too tired to remember why. Old Joe, the homeless man who came in every morning, sat at the counter nursing a water. Sarah grabbed the coffee pot without thinking and filled a cup for him, sliding it across. "Sarah, you can't keep doing that," her manager warned from a kitchen window. "Put on my tab," Sarah called back, knowing she couldn't afford it, but unable to stop herself. If she couldn't help herself, at least she could help someone. Joe's grateful nod was payment enough. The door chime rang. Sarah turned, ready with her professional smile and her greeting. But the words died in her throat when she saw the sleek black Mercedes S-Class pulling up outside. A car worth more than she'd earned in 3 years. Probably more than she'd earned in 5. Everything was about to change. She just didn't know it yet. Sarah Mitchell's hands trembled as she carried the breakfast tray down the marble hallway of the Montgomery estate, her worn sneakers squeaking against imported Italian floors that cost more than she'd earned in her entire life. The waitress uniform she'd refused to give up looked absurdly out of place against the Versailles-level luxury surrounding her, unless fate had a cruel sense of humor. 6 months ago, she would have never imagined herself here, living in a mansion, caring for a teenager she barely knew, working for a man whose very presence made her heart race with confusion and something she wasn't ready to name. But what she didn't know was that the choice she'd made to help this family would soon cost her everything she held dear, forcing her to confront a devastating secret that connected her to these people in ways she never could have imagined. A secret that would make her question everything. The weight of a promise she didn't know she'd made, built on a tragedy that destroyed her first life. Before we dive into how a widowed waitress with nothing became the miracle this broken family desperately needed, hit that like button and tell me in the comments. Have you ever helped someone who changed your life more than you changed theirs? Also, let us know what city you are watching from. The cracked linoleum beneath Sarah Mitchell's feet told the story of Lou's Diner better than any review could. 30 years of wear, patched in spots, giving way in others. It was 5:47 a.m., and Sarah was already 4 hours into her shift, the ancient coffee maker hissing behind her like it might finally give up the ghost today. The smell of grease had embedded itself into everything. The walls, the menus, her uniform, probably her skin. After 8 months of double shifts, she'd stopped noticing. Double shift number 127. Sarah kept count because numbers were concrete, manageable, unlike everything else in her life since David died. Her worn sneakers squeaked as she moved between tables, the left one developing a hole she couldn't afford to fix yet. She counted tips in her head while refilling coffee for the construction workers at table 6. $43.50 so far. Rent was due in 4 days. She was still $340 short. The coffee stain on her uniform mocked her from just below her name tag. She tried everything to get it out, but it had settled in permanently, like her grief. Her lower back ached from standing 14 hours yesterday, a dull throb that had become as familiar as breathing. "Sarah, you okay?" Diane asked from behind the counter, her motherly concern showing through. "I'm fine, really," Sarah deflected automatically, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Pride was expensive, but it was all she had left of who she used to be. In her apron pocket, medical debt collector letters crinkled every time she moved. She'd stopped opening them. The numbers were too big, too impossible, too much like drowning in slow motion. Her phone buzzed. She glanced at it during a rare lull. A voicemail from this morning that she'd saved. Emma's 7-year-old voice, recorded before Mrs. Chen picked her up from their apartment. "Love you, Mommy. Don't work too hard." Sarah's throat tightened. She couldn't afford to cry at work, Mrs. Chen watched Emma most mornings now, had done so for 8 months without ever asking for the full payment Sarah owed her. Another debt Sarah carried. Another kindness she couldn't repay. Emma was at the neighbor's house more than their own apartment these days. What kind of mother did that make her? The kind trying to survive, she reminded herself. The kind doing whatever it took. During her bathroom break, Sarah pulled out her phone's calculator app and did the math she'd already done 50 times. After rent, she'd have $87 for food, utilities, and everything else until next payday in 2 weeks. Emma needed new shoes. Her toes were cramping in the old ones. The electricity bill was overdue. The final notice had come yesterday. Sarah stared at her reflection in the bathroom mirror. 32 years old, looking 40. Dark circles under her eyes that makeup couldn't hide anymore. Hair pulled back in a ponytail because she couldn't afford a haircut. When had she become this person? But then she thought of David in that hospital bed. The way he'd held her hand even when the pain made him shake. The way he'd smiled at her right up until the end, trying to make her believe everything would be okay even when they both knew it wouldn't. "I'm still here," she whispered to her reflection. "Still standing. That has to count for something." She smoothed her uniform, checked that the order pad was in her pocket, and walked back out to the floor. Table 9 needed their check. The coffee maker needed refilling. Life needed living, even when you were too tired to remember why. Old Joe, the homeless man who came in every morning, sat at the counter nursing water. Sarah grabbed the coffee pot without thinking and filled a cup for him, sliding it across. "Sarah, you can't keep doing that," her manager warned from a kitchen window. "Put on my tab," Sarah called back, knowing she couldn't afford it, but unable to stop herself. If she couldn't help herself, at least she could help someone. Joe's grateful nod was payment enough. The door chime rang. Sarah turned, ready with her professional smile and her greeting. But the words died in her throat when she saw the sleek black Mercedes S-Class pulling up outside. A car worth more than she'd earn in 3 years, probably more than she'd earn in 5. Everything was about to change. She just didn't know it yet. "No," Sarah cut him off, fear spiking through her chest like ice water. She didn't know exactly what he was about to offer, but she knew it would complicate her carefully controlled life. Rich people didn't make simple offers. Everything came with strings, with hidden costs, with ways to hurt you. "I'm sorry. I have my own daughter to worry about. I can't." She grabbed his empty coffee cup, needing distance, needing space to breathe, getting involved with wealthy people and their complicated lives. It never ended well for people like her. She'd seen it happen to her cousin, to her neighbor, to everyone who'd ever believed they could step into that world without consequences. You became disposable, useful until you weren't, replaceable as soon as someone better came along. Sarah retreated to the safety of the kitchen, her heart pounding. Through the service window, she could see Alexander still sitting in the booth, head in his hands, shoulders slumped under the weight of problems she didn't want to understand. She had enough problems of her own. But that night, lying in her narrow bed while Emma slept peacefully in the next room, Sarah couldn't stop thinking about his words, about a 15-year-old boy who'd given up on living, about a father who had everything except the one thing that mattered. She didn't know that in 2 weeks, the universe would take away her choice. That desperation would drive her to a decision pride would never allow. That sometimes refusing to get involved wasn't an option at all. 2 weeks later, Sarah's phone rang during the lunch rush. The school nurse's voice was carefully calm, the kind of calm that meant panic underneath. "Mrs. Mitchell, Emma collapsed during recess. We've called an ambulance." The world tilted sideways. The emergency room smelled like antiseptic and fear. Fluorescent lights too bright, forms to sign with hands that wouldn't stop shaking, and a doctor with kind eyes delivering words that sounded like a death sentence. "Rare, congenital heart condition. She needs immediate surgery." The number, $180,000 for the operation alone. Recovery costs, medications, follow-up care, potentially lifelong. Sarah's bare-bones insurance policy covered $47,000. The rest might as well have been $47 million. 12 loan applications. Rejected. 8 charity foundations. Waitlist 6 to 9 months long. Emma had weeks, not months. A crowdfunding campaign raised $3,400 in 2 weeks. Not enough, not nearly fast enough. The hospital financial counselor delivered the final blow with apologetic eyes. You have 3 weeks before we have to discharge her. At 2:17 a.m., Sarah sat alone in the corridor doing impossible math on her phone's calculator. Through the window, Emma slept, pale and fragile. Her 7-year-old chest rising and falling with a rhythm that might stop. Pride versus daughter's life. When the nurse approached with an embossed business card, Sarah already knew whose name would be on it. Alexander Montgomery. Her choice had been taken away. Or maybe, finally, she'd been given one that actually mattered. The next morning, she made the call. Sarah stared at the embossed business card for 20 minutes before her fingers would dial. The numbers seemed to blur and refocus, while her mind waged war with itself. This is charity. This is pity. This makes you dependent on a man you don't know, a world you don't belong to. But another voice, quieter, fiercer, more desperate, cut through the pride. This is Emma's life. Pride doesn't matter if she's dead. The phone rang 3 times before Alexander answered. Sarah. He said her name like he'd been waiting for the call, like he'd known she'd have no choice but to make it. How did you know about Emma? Her voice came out harder than intended. The nurse who gave you my card. She's a friend. When she told me about your daughter's condition, He paused. I wanted to help. Help. Right. Sarah closed her eyes. What do you want from me? Come live at the estate. Work with Marcus. No medical degree required. No formal therapy training. Just show up. Be present. Help him find a reason to try again. His voice softened. In exchange, I'll cover all of Emma's medical expenses. Completely. Every single dollar. It sounded too good to be true. Sarah had learned that when something seemed too good to be true, it always came with hidden costs. What's the catch? She asked bluntly. No catch, Alexander replied. Just don't give up on him. Everyone else has. His mother left us 2 years before the accident. The staff treats him like fragile glass. His friends stopped visiting months ago. He's 15 years old and completely alone. I'm asking you to care when no one else will. Why me? You don't know me. I saw you at the diner. You gave that homeless man free coffee even though you were counting every dollar for rent. You spoke to me like a human being instead of a checkbook. That's who Marcus needs. Someone who sees people, not problems or paychecks. Sarah's throat tightened. What happens when I fail? When he doesn't get better? Then you tried. That's more than anyone else has done. The terms are simple. Start immediately. Live in position. Emma would stay with Mrs. Chun with video calls every night. Trial period of 1 month. If Marcus showed any improvement, any at all, the contract continued. Sarah looked through the hospital window at Emma's sleeping form. Her daughter's chest rising and falling with mechanical assistance now. When do I start? Tomorrow. I'll send a car. After she hung up, Sarah sat in the quiet corridor and wondered what she'd just agreed to. But when Emma opened her eyes and smiled weakly at her mother through the window, Sarah knew the answer. Everything. She'd agreed to everything. Because when your child's life hangs in the balance, there is no choice. There's only survival. The iron gates of the Montgomery estate opened like the entrance to another dimension. The driveway stretched a 1/4 mile through manicured grounds that probably employed a dozen gardeners. Sarah sat in the back of the town car, sent by Alexander, driven by a man in an actual uniform, and tried to remember how to breathe. The mansion wasn't a house. It was a statement. 14,000 square feet of colonial architecture, white columns, windows that sparkled in the afternoon sun. Sarah's entire apartment could have fit in the foyer. Mrs. Brennan, the housekeeper, met her at the door. 60-ish, steel-gray hair in a perfect bun, kind eyes that had seen too many failures. "Welcome, Ms. Mitchell. You're the 7th person to try with Master Marcus." 7th. Sarah's stomach dropped. "Don't take it personally. The boy is troubled." Mrs. Brennan led her through hallways lined with art that belonged in museums. Pierre, our chef, makes meals he won't eat. Nurse Williams manages his medications. Carlos maintains the grounds Marcus won't go outside to see. They passed a therapy room filled with unused equipment, dust gathering on parallel bars and weight machines. Then Marcus's wing. Hallways widened for wheelchair access, bathrooms modified. A bedroom suite larger than most family homes. "This is your room," Mrs. Brennan said, opening a door. Sarah stepped inside and felt like a swan that had wandered into a junkyard. Except she was the junkyard. The room was bigger than her entire apartment. Marble bathroom, king-size bed, French doors opening to a balcony overlooking gardens that seemed to stretch forever. "I can't," Sarah started. "Mr. Montgomery insists. Dinner is at 7 if you'd like to join the family, or we can bring trays to your room." Mrs. Brennan's expression softened slightly. "For what it's worth, I hope you succeed. That boy needs someone." After she left, Sarah sat on the edge of the bed and called Emma. "Mom." Emma's face filled the phone screen, her color already better after 2 days of medication. "Your room looks like a castle. It's just temporary, baby. Just until we figure things out. Mrs. Chen says I can stay as long as I need. She's teaching me to make dumplings." Emma's enthusiasm was infectious, but Sarah felt the guilt like a weight on her chest. "I love you, Emma Bear." "Love you too, Mommy." Emma's expression turned serious in that way only children could manage. "Daddy would say you're supposed to be there." The words hit Sarah like a fist to the chest. David, always believing in helping people, in showing up, in doing the hard thing because it was right. After she hung up, Sarah stood at the French doors, looking out at a world she didn't belong to. Somewhere in this mansion, a 15-year-old boy sat alone in the dark, convinced his life was over. She checked her reflection in the bathroom mirror, still wearing her waitress uniform because it was the nicest thing she owned, and tried to gather courage from somewhere deep. "You showed up for David every day," she whispered to herself. "You can show up for this kid." The walk down the marble hallway to Marcus's room felt like miles. Sarah's worn sneakers squeaked against imported Italian floors. Outside his door, she paused, took a breath, and knocked. "Go away," came the muffled response. Sarah knocked again. "I said go away." Sarah opened the door anyway. Time to begin. The room was dark, curtains drawn against the afternoon sun. The only light came from multiple gaming monitors casting blue shadows across walls lined with shelves, books, trophies from another life, photos of a boy who used to smile. Marcus sat in his wheelchair by the window, his back to the door, headphones on, deliberately ignoring her entrance. The wheelchair itself was a state-of-the-art model, probably $40,000 of engineering and luxury. Pristine, barely used. Next to it sat a pharmacy's worth of prescription bottles on the dresser, arranged by a nurse who cared more about organization than connection. Sarah stepped inside and closed the door softly behind her. "Hi, Marcus," she said, keeping her voice even. "I'm Sarah." "Another one?" Marcus didn't turn around, didn't remove his headphones. "How much is he paying you? 6 figures? More?" "Enough to save my daughter's life," Sarah replied honestly. That made him turn. The wheelchair spun around with practiced ease, and Sarah got her first real look at Marcus Montgomery. 15 years old, but looking 12, pale for months indoors, thin in a way that spoke of meals refused and muscle wasted. but it was his eyes that caught her. Old. Too old. Defensive anger masking an ocean of pain. "At least you're honest," he said, studying her with sharp intelligence. The others pretended to care, pretended they were here to help me reach my full potential, or some other bullshit. "I'm not going to pretend I'm here just for you," Sarah said, taking a step closer. "I need this job, but that doesn't mean I won't actually try." "Try what?" Marcus's voice dripped with bitterness. "To fix me? 17 specialists said I'm not fixable. What makes you think you can do better? You're not even a doctor. You're what, a waitress? Maybe fix isn't the goal. Then what is?" He leaned forward, challenging her. "What's your magic solution that all those professionals with their decades of experience and multiple degrees missed?" "Showing up," Sarah said simply. "That's it. That's all I'm promising." Marcus laughed, a bitter sound that had no joy in it. "My dad's paying you 6 figures to show up? He's paying me to not give up. Big difference." They stared at each other across the dark room, a standoff between two people who'd both lost everything and were trying to survive the aftermath in different ways. "You know what?" Marcus said finally. "I don't want you here. Leave." Sarah stayed exactly where she was. "I'll go when your dad fires me. Until then, I show up. Get out." Marcus's voice rose. "No." I said, "Get out." Marcus grabbed a book from the table beside him and threw it. It sailed past Sarah's shoulder, intentionally missing by several feet, and thudded against the door. Sarah didn't flinch. She just looked at him steadily and said, "I'll see you tomorrow." Then she turned and walked out, closing the door gently behind her. In the hallway, Alexander stood waiting, his face tight with worry. "That was exactly what I expected," Sarah said, surprised at how calm she felt. "He's testing if I'll quit like everyone else." "Will you?" Alexander's voice held a note of desperation. "Not today." That night, in her castle-like room that felt nothing like home, Sarah video called Emma. The surgery had been moved up, scheduled for tomorrow morning now that payment was secured. Emma was groggy from pre-op medications, but smiling. "Did you help the boy, Mommy?" she asked, her words slightly slurred. "Working on it, baby. Daddy always said helping people is hard. That's why most people don't do it." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "When did Daddy tell you that?" "Before he got too sick to talk much. He said you were the best at helping because you never quit." Emma yawned. "Mrs. Chen says I need to sleep now." "Love you, Mommy." "Love you too, Emma Bear. I'll call you after your surgery tomorrow." After she hung up, Sarah sat alone in the enormous room and let the doubt creep in. What had she gotten herself into? A hostile teenager who didn't want her help. A mansion where she didn't belong. A deal with a billionaire that felt like selling her soul. But Emma was having surgery tomorrow. Life-saving surgery that Sarah could never have afforded alone. And somewhere in this massive house, a 15-year-old boy sat in the dark, convinced his life was over. If Sarah could just show up, if she could just be present the way Miguel had been present for David, maybe that would be enough. It had to be enough, because she didn't have anything else to offer except her stubborn refusal to give up. And sometimes in the darkest moments, that stubborn refusal was the only light that mattered. Day 2 arrived. With sunrise, Sarah watched from her balcony. She made her way to the kitchen where Pierre had prepared a breakfast tray, eggs, toast, fresh fruit, orange juice. Food Marcus probably wouldn't eat. She carried it to his door and knocked. No answer. She knocked again and entered anyway. Marcus sat exactly where he'd been yesterday, facing his gaming monitors, headphones on. He didn't acknowledge her entrance. "Good morning," Sarah said, setting the tray on a table. "It's beautiful outside. 70 degrees, sunny, perfect weather." Silence. "Emma's surgery is this morning. I'm nervous. I know it'll be fine, but you can't stop yourself from worrying, you know?" Marcus's shoulders tightened slightly, listening, even if he pretended not to. "Anyway, I'll let you eat. See you tomorrow." Sarah left, closing the door softly. Day 3 followed the same pattern. Breakfast tray. One-sided conversation about Emma's successful surgery, about nothing important, about small stupid things that made life worth living. Marcus maintained his silent treatment. But when Sarah sat down and started reading aloud from an adventure novel about survival, something she'd found on a shelf, he didn't tell her to stop. Day 4 brought the first crack in his armor. "That story, stupid," Marcus said suddenly, not turning from his monitors. "The survival tactics are all wrong. You can't actually start a fire that way." Sarah hid her smile. "Oh, you know better?" And Marcus launched into a 20-minute lecture on actual wilderness survival techniques. His voice animated for the first time, his intelligence and passion breaking through the defensive walls. Sarah listened, asked questions, learned. By the end, they had their first real conversation. Day 5. Sarah asked about the video games he played. Marcus explained complex strategy systems, tactics, team dynamics. "Sounds like chess," Sarah observed. "It basically is," Marcus said and almost smiled, with explosions. That small smile felt like winning the lottery. Day 6 tested boundaries differently. "Want to go outside?" Sarah asked. "No." The immediate shutdown. Walls slamming back up. "Okay. Want me to open the curtains?" Long pause. "Fine." Sarah pulled back the heavy drapes, letting sunlight flood the room for the first time in weeks. Marcus squinted, adjusted, but didn't complain or demand she close them again. Progress. Day 7 brought unexpected vulnerability. "I heard you on the phone last night with your daughter," Marcus said quietly. "The surgery worked?" "Yes," Sarah said. "Thanks to your dad." "Must be nice." Marcus's voice was hollow. "Having someone who'd do anything to save you." "He's trying to save you too, Marcus. You just won't let him." Long silence stretched between them. "It's different," Marcus finally said. "How?" "She's worth saving." The words hung in the air, heavy with self-loathing and grief. Sarah felt something crack open in her chest. She sat on the floor next to his wheelchair, not hovering, not threatening, just present. "Marcus, you want to know why I really keep showing up?" He didn't answer, but his hands stilled on his keyboard. "Listening. Because I watched my husband die in a hospital bed. I sat there every single day for 3 months knowing I couldn't fix him, couldn't save him, could barely even help him manage the pain. But I showed up anyway because he was alive and that mattered. You're alive, and that matters. Even if you don't believe it yet, I do." Marcus's shoulders began to shake. Then the tears came. First time since the accident. His father would later tell her. Not loud, dramatic sobs. Just quiet crying that sounded like something breaking open, releasing pressure that had been building for 8 months. Sarah didn't try to comfort him, didn't touch him, didn't offer empty platitudes. She just sat with him and let him feel it. Let him grieve. Let him be human instead of trying to be strong. In the hallway outside, Alexander Montgomery stood with his hand pressed to the wall, listening to his son cry for the first time in months. His own tears streamed down his face as he heard this widowed waitress give his son what all his money couldn't buy. Genuine compassion. Something cracked open in Alexander's carefully guarded heart. This woman who had nothing was giving them everything. And in that moment, watching through the crack in the door, Alexander knew he was falling in love with her. That evening, after dinner, Alexander had insisted Sarah join. Marcus wheeled himself to her room. She opened the door to find him there, vulnerability written across his face. "What if I try and nothing changes?" he asked without preamble. Sarah stepped into the hallway, closing the door behind her. She sat on the floor, so they were eye level. "Then nothing changes," she said simply. "You're exactly where you are now. So why try? Because what if something does change? What if there's a chance, even a tiny one, that you could feel different? Move different? Hurt less? What risk are you really taking if you try?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment, his 15-year-old face looking ancient. The risk is hope. Hope hurts worse than the paralysis. Yeah, it does, Sarah agreed softly. Hope is brutal. But you know what's worse? Looking back in 10 years and wondering if you gave up too soon. Another silence stretched between them, heavy with possibility. What would I have to do? Marcus finally asked. Let me look at your medical records. Let me talk to doctors. Let me see if there's something everyone missed. Why would you see something 17 specialists didn't? Maybe I won't, Sarah admitted. But I don't have decades of training telling me what's impossible. Sometimes fresh eyes help. Marcus met her gaze, really looked at her, saw someone who'd lost everything and kept fighting anyway. Saw someone who showed up even when it was hard. Saw someone who believed he was worth the effort. Okay, he said quietly. Try. And with that single word, everything changed. This state library became Sarah's second home over the following week. While Marcus slept, while the household quieted, she sat surrounded by medical journals she barely understood, her laptop glowing in the dim light, diving into a world of terminology that felt like a foreign language. T11, T12 incomplete, spinal cord injury, neural pathways, muscle atrophy, neuroplasticity. The words swam together at first, but Sarah was nothing if not stubborn. She'd taught herself to navigate hospital billing codes when David was sick. She could teach herself this. YouTube became her university. Videos from physical therapists, lectures from rehabilitation specialists, testimonials from SCI patients who defied their prognosis. She took notes in a battered notebook, cross-referencing information, looking for patterns the specialists might have missed. Online forums for spinal cord injury families became her late-night companions. Real people sharing real experiences, not clinical assessments. Stories of small victories, unexpected recoveries. Techniques that worked when textbook methods failed. Mommy, look like when you helped me with math homework, Emma said during their nightly video call, her face filling the screen with concern. Sarah smiled tiredly. Same idea, baby. Trying to solve a puzzle. Is it a hard puzzle? The hardest. But I think I'm finding some pieces. Dr. Renee Hart became Sarah's lifeline, a neurologist who'd consulted on Marcus's case early on and responded to Sarah's cold email with surprising warmth. Their phone consultations grew from professional courtesy to genuine collaboration. You're asking the right questions, Dr. Hart told her during their third call. Most families give up at the prognosis. They don't dig deeper. I don't understand why everyone focused on what couldn't be fixed, Sarah said, scrolling through Marcus's files. His injury is incomplete. That means some neural pathways are still intact, right? Correct. But those pathways were dormant and used. And the muscle atrophy, that's from disuse, not permanent damage? Also correct. Dr. Hart's voice held new respect. What are you thinking? Sarah's hypothesis crystallized as she spoke it aloud. What if everyone aimed for the wrong goal? Full recovery versus functional improvement. What if Marcus couldn't walk like before, but he could walk somehow? What if the mental and emotional components, the depression, the hopelessness, suppressed his recovery efforts more than the physical injury? Go on, Dr. Hart urged. What if we focus on what's working instead of what's broken? Build confidence through micro-achievements. Address his spirit while we address his body. Sarah, Dr. Hart said slowly, you might actually be onto something. That night, Sarah prepared a presentation for Alexander. She found him in his study after midnight, exhausted from board meetings, tie loosened, looking as worn down as she felt. I need to talk to you about Marcus, she said from the doorway. Alexander straightened immediately. Is he okay? He's fine. Better than fine, actually. But I think I found something. Sarah entered, clutching her binder of research like a shield. She was nervous, acutely aware she was out of her depth, a waitress presenting medical theories to a billionaire. But Alexander listened, As she laid out her findings, her hypothesis, her plan, when she finished, she added quickly, "I'm not a doctor. I'm a waitress who knows how to Google." But I think everyone's been so focused on the damage that they forgot about what's still working. Alexander studied the binder, then looked at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "What do you need from us?" "Time, patience, and Marcus's willingness to hurt a little in hopes of hurting less." "You have all three," Alexander said quietly. "Whatever you need, it's yours." As Sarah left the study, she didn't see Alexander pick up the phone to call Dr. Hart or hear him say, "I think he's going to save my son, and I think I'm falling in love with her." Week 3 began with cautious optimism and resistance bands. The therapy room hadn't been used in months, equipment gathering dust like forgotten promises. Sarah opened the curtains first. Marcus needed light, needed to see what he was doing, needed to stop hiding in darkness. "Ready?" she asked. Marcus sat in his wheelchair, eyeing the resistance bands like they might bite him. "I guess." Session 1 was simple. Upper body work, seated exercises, nothing that pushed too hard. Marcus went through the motions with gritted teeth, his face showing the effort of muscles that had atrophied from disuse. 15 minutes in, he said, "That's enough." Sarah didn't argue. "That's perfect. Same time tomorrow." Marcus's expression showed surprise. No pushing, no disappointment. "Fine." Progress. Session 2, 2 days later, focused on core strength. Building trunk stability would be crucial for everything else. Marcus grimaced as he tried to hold positions, his body trembling with effort. "Pain or discomfort?" Sarah asked, watching him carefully. "What's the difference?" Marcus gasped. "Pain means stop. Something's wrong. Discomfort means muscles waking up, doing work they forgot how to do." Marcus considered. "Discomfort, I think." Then came a standing frame, a device that held Marcus upright, allowing his body to remember what vertical felt like. Sarah and Nurse Williams positioned him carefully, strapping him in, adjusting supports. 30 seconds, Sarah said. "That's all we're trying for." Marcus's whole body shook with the effort of holding the position. His face flushed red, sweat beading on his forehead. Sarah watched the timer, watched him, ready to stop if needed. 20 seconds, 25, 30. "Look at you," Sarah said softly. "Vertical." Marcus didn't smile, but he didn't dismiss it either. Something flickered in his eyes, not quite hope, but not quite despair either. Possibility, maybe. Session 3 brought their first real setback. Marcus wanted to try the standing frame again, push for a longer duration. 45 seconds in, his legs buckled. He collapsed into his wheelchair, frustration boiling over. "This is pointless." He grabbed his water bottle and threw it across the room, plastic clattering against expensive equipment. Sarah stayed calm, her voice level. "Okay, we're done for today." "I told you," Marcus's voice cracked. "I told everyone. It's not going to work." "You stood for 45 seconds. Last week you couldn't stand for 5. That's not pointless. That's progress." Progress toward what? Being slightly less useless. Progress toward proving 17 specialists wrong. That night, Sarah was back in the library, researching modifications to their approach, when she heard the soft whir of Marcus's wheelchair in the hallway. He appeared in the doorway, unable to sleep, drawn to the only person who seemed to understand. "Why are you trying so hard?" he asked. Sarah looked up from her notes. "Because you're trying it all. That's worth matching." "What if I can't do it?" "Then we figure out what you can do. But we don't know until we try everything." Marcus wheeled closer, his 15-year-old face looking ancient in the lamplight. "Can I tell you about the accident? If you want to." The story came out haltingly. The driver, who ran the red light, the T-bone collision on the passenger side where Marcus sat, the sound of metal crushing. waking up in the hospital unable to feel his legs, unable to make them move no matter how hard he tried. The worst part wasn't the pain, Marcus said quietly. It was watching my dad pretend everything would be okay when we both knew it wouldn't. Everyone pretending. Like if we just stayed positive enough, reality would change. Sarah set down her pen. Maybe your dad wasn't pretending. Maybe he was hoping. What's the difference? Hope does the work. Pretending just waits for miracles. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then, do you think I can really walk again? I think you can try. And trying is how we find out what's possible. It wasn't a promise. It wasn't false optimism. It was just truth offered without pretense. And somehow, that meant more than any guarantee ever could. Week 5 brought their first real breakthrough. Marcus stood in the frame for 2 full minutes, his muscles stronger now, his body remembering what it had forgotten. From the doorway, Alexander watched in silence, his hand pressed to his mouth, tears streaming down his face that he didn't bother to wipe away. Silent tears of hope he'd thought were dead. Week 6, weight shifting. Marcus, supported heavily by the parallel bars, shifted his weight from his left leg to his right. A simple movement that meant everything. You just moved your body in space through your own power, Sarah said, her voice thick with emotion. Barely, Marcus countered. But he was almost smiling. Counts. Week 7 brought something miraculous. During electrical stimulation therapy, designed to remind dormant nerves how to fire, Marcus suddenly stiffened. Wait. Stop. Sarah paused immediately. What's wrong? I felt something. In my left thigh. Marcus's eyes were wide. It was tiny, like a whisper, but it was there. Dr. Hart's consultation confirmed it. A neural pathway reactivating. Something that wasn't supposed to happen. Something the specialist said was impossible. Alexander had to leave the room to compose himself, his chest heaving with sobs in the hallway. His son was coming back. Week 8 brought the conversation that changed everything between them. Why do you keep coming back? Marcus asked during a break in therapy. I'm horrible to you. I throw things. I complain. I'm the worst patient possible. Sarah sat on the floor beside his wheelchair, her face open and honest. Because I've lost someone I loved, Marcus. I watched my husband die, and I couldn't do anything to stop it. I couldn't save him. I could barely help him. But you're still here. You're alive. And maybe I can't fix your legs, but I can show up and remind you that your life still matters. That you still matter. Marcus's face crumpled. He cried. Real, deep sobbing that shook his thin shoulders. Sarah didn't try to fix it, didn't offer platitudes, just sat with him while he grieved everything he'd lost and everything he was finding again. In the hallway, Alexander heard every word and felt something crack open permanently in his chest. Week 10 delivered the moment they'd been building toward. Marcus stood between the parallel bars, Sarah on one side, Nurse Williams on the other. He positioned his hands lightly, shifted his weight fully onto his trembling legs, and lifted his right foot. 6 inches off the ground, 12 inches forward, then down. Everyone held their breath. His left foot lifted. Another step. One complete step. The first in 8 months. Marcus collapsed into his wheelchair, completely exhausted. But he was smiling. Truly smiling for the first time since before the accident. I did it. Holy shit, I actually did it. Sarah was crying openly, not bothering to hide it. You did. Marcus, you did. Alexander entered the room at that moment, having been summoned by Nurse Williams's frantic text. You walked. Marcus looked at his father, still breathless, still grinning. 1 step? But yeah, I walked. Pause for just a second. If Marcus's first step made you feel something, drop a heart emoji in the comments. And if you're rooting for Sarah and this family, subscribe so you don't miss what happens next, because what Alexander discovers is about to change everything. Week 11. 2 steps, then 3, then 5 in a single session. Marcus's confidence grew with each small victory. His jokes returned. "At this rate, I'll run a marathon by 40, he quipped. "Let's start with walking to the bathroom independently," Sarah countered. Always the optimist. Week 12 brought the impossible. Marcus stood without support bars. No parallel rails, no hand to catch him if he fell. Just a wobbling, finding his balance, staying upright for 15 seconds while Sarah stood ready but not touching. "I'm standing on my own," Marcus breathed, wonder in his voice. Alexander entered at precisely that moment. Father and son locked eyes across the room. Alexander couldn't speak, could only nod through his tears. Marcus carefully lowered himself back into his wheelchair, but his face glowed with triumph. "Did you see, Dad?" "I saw, Marcus. I saw." The entire household transformed. Mrs. Brennan whispered to Nurse Williams, "I've never seen Master Marcus smile like that." Pierre started cooking Marcus's favorite meals, which Marcus actually ate now. Carlos set up an outdoor therapy space in the gardens. Nurse Williams said simply, "Whatever you're doing, don't stop." During video calls, Emma watched Marcus's progress with 7-year-old wonder. "Mom, you're making miracles." "No, baby," Sarah said softly, "just showing up." But deep down, Sarah knew it was more than that. Something was happening in this house. This broken family knitting itself back together through determination and hope and the stubborn refusal to accept impossible as an answer. The attraction grew in stolen moments, in spaces between therapy sessions and family dinners, in the quiet hours when the rest of the house slept. Late one night, Alexander found Sarah in the library again, surrounded by research papers and empty teacups. He brought fresh tea without asking, set it beside her, and simply said, "You should sleep. So should you." He sat on the couch nearby, and their conversation drifted from Marcus's progress to more personal territory. Sarah found herself talking about David. Really talking, not just acknowledging his death, but sharing who he'd been, his terrible jokes, his way of making everyone feel seen, how much Emma looked like him. Alexander shared his own failures, his ex-wife leaving, taking nothing but her freedom and leaving him to explain to a 13-year-old why his mother didn't want to be his mother anymore, how he'd thrown himself into work, into building his empire, while his son withered alone, how he'd failed Marcus twice, once by not being present, again by not knowing how to save him after the accident. They sat close on the couch, Alexander's hand near Sarah's on the cushion. Neither moved closer, both painfully aware of the space between them and what crossing it would mean. The family dinners became a new tradition. Alexander insisted Sarah join them. "You're not staff," he said when she protested. "She's not staff, Dad," Marcus agreed. "She's more like family." The words created an uncomfortable moment for Sarah, her class consciousness flaring. She didn't belong at this table with its crystals and food prepared by a private chef. But Alexander's expression was kind as he said, "Marcus is right." Their smiles across the table felt like secrets. One rainy afternoon, a power outage during therapy left them stranded. Marcus napped after his session, exhausted from the hard work. Sarah and Alexander found themselves trapped in conversation in the therapy room, rain hammering the windows, the world reduced to just the two of them. "I've been watching you with him," Alexander said quietly. "The way you never give up, even when he's difficult, even when progress is microscopic. You just keep showing up. That's the job." Sarah deflected automatically. "It stopped being just a job weeks ago." Alexander's voice was intense, his gaze holding hers. "For both of us." Fear spiked through Sarah. "Mr. Montgomery." "Alexander, please." The moment stretched between them, charged with everything unspoken. He leaned slightly closer. She didn't pull away. They were inches apart when Marcus's voice called from the other room, breaking the spell. "Sarah? Dad? Power's back on." They stepped apart quickly, both relieved and disappointed. The moment lost but not forgotten. During her video call with Emma that night, her daughter asked, "Do you like it there, Mommy?" "It's complicated, baby," Sarah said, which was the understatement of her life. She couldn't afford to like it. This was temporary. This wasn't her world. She was here for Emma, for the medical bills, for the job. Not for Alexander's haunted eyes or his rare smiles or the way her heart raced when he entered a room. But her heart wasn't listening to logic. Alexander confided in Dr. Hart during one of her visits. "I think I'm falling for her." "Does she know?" "I can't tell her." The power dynamic. She's here because I'm paying her to save my son. How can I separate what's real from what's obligation? Or maybe, Dr. Hart said gently, she's here because she's the kind of person who saves people. That's who she is. The money just made it possible. But Alexander didn't know how to bridge the gap between employer and something more. So he watched Sarah celebrate Marcus's victories with joy more real than anything in his carefully constructed life. And he kept his feelings locked away where they couldn't complicate things further. Week 14, late afternoon, everything changed. Marcus wheeled himself into the therapy room with a determination Sarah hadn't seen before. "I want to try walking," he announced. "Really walking. Not 5 steps. As many as I can." "You sure?" Sarah asked carefully. "We can work up to." "I'm sure. I'm ready." Sarah sent a text to Alexander. "You should be here for this." Within minutes, the therapy room filled with witnesses. Alexander arrived first, his face tense with hope and fear. Dr. Hart, who'd been consulting on-site, appeared with her medical assessment tools. Nurse Williams positioned Marcus's wheelchair nearby, ready if needed. Even Mrs. Brennan peeked from the doorway, unable to stay away. Everyone knew this was the moment, the real test, the answer to the question they'd been asking for 14 weeks. Marcus positioned himself at the start of the parallel bars. His hands rested lightly on the rails, for balance only, not support. His face showed fierce concentration. "Remember," Sarah said softly, walking parallel to him outside the bars. "Your pace, your strength, no one else's." Marcus nodded. He shifted his weight fully onto his legs. No trembling this time. His muscles had strengthened, remembered, relearned. He lifted his right foot. Step 1. His left foot lifts. Step 2. The room holds its collective breath, no one daring to speak, to move, to break whatever magic is happening. His right foot again. Step 3. His breathing stays controlled, focused, the way Sarah taught him. Step 4. 5. 6. Halfway down the bars now. Sarah walks parallel to him, her hands ready but not touching, trusting him to do this himself. Step 7. 8. 9. Alexander's hand covers his mouth. Tears stream down his face unchecked. Step 10. 11. Marcus's face shows strain now, muscle fatigue setting in, but his determination never wavers. Step 12. 13. His legs shake, push beyond anything they've done before. Step 14. One more, just one more. Step 15. Marcus reaches the end of the parallel bars. He stands there, gripping them, his chest heaving with exertion, sweat soaking his shirt. But standing, on his own 2 feet, 15 steps, impossible steps. The silence lasts only a heartbeat. Then, I walked. Marcus's voice cracks with emotion and disbelief. I fucking walked. Sarah is crying openly, not even trying to hide it anymore. You did. Marcus, you did it. Alexander approaches carefully, reverently, like he's witnessing something sacred. Marcus turns his head, sees his father's tears, and something in both of them breaks open. Dad, I walked. Alexander can't speak. He just reaches out, hand extended. Marcus carefully releases one hand from the bar and reaches back. Father and son clasp hands while Marcus stands on legs that work, on feet that carry him, on a body that refused to accept impossible. "I'm so proud of you," Alexander finally manages. "So incredibly proud." Marcus's voice breaks. "I couldn't have done it without her." Nurse Williams guides him to his wheelchair. He collapses into it, completely exhausted, but radiating satisfaction. Mrs. Brennan cries in the doorway. Pierre is already planning a celebration feast. Dr. Hart documents everything with shaking hands. "This is medically remarkable," she says. "The specialist said this was impossible." Sarah excuses herself, overwhelmed. She needs air, needs space to process what just happened. In the estate gardens, she calls Emma. "He walked, baby." Marcus walked. "See, Mom?" Emma's voice is pure joy. "Miracles are real." "Yeah, baby. I guess they are." Alexander finds her there at sunset. Her face streaked with tears she can't seem to stop. "He's asking for you," Alexander says softly. "I just needed a minute." "Sarah." He steps closer. "What you've done for him, for us, there are no words. He did the work. You gave him the reason to try." Alexander's voice is raw with emotion. "I need to tell you something. Tonight, after dinner. Will you meet me in my study?" Sarah nods, suddenly nervous, though she can't say why. "Okay." As she watches the sunset over the gardens, Sarah can't shake the feeling that everything is about to change again. That this perfect moment of triumph is the calm before a storm she doesn't see coming. The formal dining room glowed with candlelight and something that felt like hope made manifest. For the first time since the accident, Marcus walked to the dinner table. With his walker. Yes, but walking. Every step a declaration that impossible was just a word. Pride radiated from him like light. The staff had prepared his favorite meal, and Emma joined via tablet propped at an empty place setting, her face beaming through the screen. "Marcus, you're a superhero," she squealed. Marcus actually laughed, a sound that had been absent for so long it felt new. "Working on it, Emma." The table conversation flowed with a lightness they hadn't experienced in months. Marcus recounted the 15 steps in detail, his excitement infectious. Dr. Hart explained the next phases of therapy, the potential ahead. "I want to try stairs next week," Marcus announced. "Let's master hallways first," Sarah countered, smiling. Laughter rippled around the table. Natural, easy, like they were a real family instead of Waitress, a billionaire, and the boy she'd helped save. But Sarah noticed Alexander's uncharacteristic quiet. He watched her throughout dinner with an expression she couldn't read. Serious. Waited. Almost sad, despite the celebration. Her stomach tightened with inexplicable dread. Why did this feel like a goodbye? Mrs. Brennan leaned close to Nurse Williams, whispering, "Something's wrong with Mr. Montgomery. Have you noticed?" Nurse Williams nodded subtly. The staff could always sense when storms were coming. As dinner wound down, Marcus stood carefully with his walker. "I want to say something." The table quieted, all attention on him. "For months ago, I didn't want to live. Didn't see the point." His voice was steady, but emotional. "Sarah showed up and didn't let me quit on myself. She's not a therapist. She's not a doctor. She's just someone who gave a damn." He looked directly at Sarah. "Thank you for everything." Sarah was crying again. Seemed to be her perpetual state lately. "You did the impossible, Marcus. You chose to try. That's what made the difference." But even in this moment of triumph, she felt Alexander's gaze on her, heavy with something unsaid. Marcus was exhausted from the day's exertions. Sarah helped him back to his room, tucked him in with a maternal gentleness that made her throat tight. "Sarah?" Marcus said as she reached the door. "Whatever my dad wants to talk to you about, don't quit. Please. I need you here." "I'm not going anywhere," Sarah promised. But her voice wavered, because deep down, some instinct warned her that nothing stayed perfect for long. And whatever Alexander needed to tell her would shatter the fragile happiness they built. Alexander's private study at 9 p.m. felt like a courtroom waiting for a verdict. Dark wood paneling absorbed the lamplight. Leather chairs flanked a mahogany desk organized with military precision. Law books lined the walls, appropriate, Sarah thought with growing dread, because this felt like Judgment Day. A folder sat on the desk like an ominous presence. 2 glasses of whiskey poured. Sarah didn't touch hers. Alexander paced, unable to sit, his usual composure fractured. Sarah had never seen him like this. Scared, uncertain, almost broken. "You're scaring me," she said. "I'm scared too." He stopped pacing, turned to face her. "I need to tell you something. I should have told you months ago. I've tried to find the right time, the right words, but there aren't any. Just say it. When you walked into that diner, it wasn't coincidence." Sarah's heart stuttered. "What do you mean?" Alexander slid the folder across the desk with shaking hands. "Open it." Sarah's fingers felt numb as she lifted the cover. Newspaper clippings, 8 months old. The headlines hit her like physical blows. Construction site, collapse kills 7 workers. Montgomery Tower South project claims multiple lives. Investigation launched into building safety violations. Photos of the collapse. Twisted metal. Emergency responders. And a list of victims that made time stop. David Mitchell, 34. Survived by wife Sarah and daughter Emma. The room tilted. Sarah couldn't breathe. "The building project that collapsed was mine," Alexander said, his voice hollow. "My company." "What?" The word came out strangled. "The contractor cut corners, used substandard materials, falsified safety inspections. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know until after. But it was my project, my company, my responsibility." Sarah's mind flashed to that day. Police at her door, their practiced sympathy. The hospital where David's co-workers had been brought. The funeral she couldn't afford. The lawsuit that barely covered costs. 8 months of drowning in debt and grief. "You knew," she whispered. "This whole time you knew who I was?" Alexander's face showed his guilt like an open wound. "After the accident, I investigated every family affected. Read every file. Learned every name, every story. I saw your name, Sarah Mitchell. Widow. 1 daughter, Emma, age 7. I memorized it all. When I walked into that diner, I recognized you immediately." Sarah stood abruptly, backing away from the desk like it was radioactive. "So this was guilt money? Charity to make yourself feel better about killing my husband?" "Sarah, everything, Marcus, the medical bills, this whole situation, was about your guilt, about you feeling less responsible for destroying my life. It started that way," Alexander admitted, and at least he had the decency not to lie. "When Emma got sick and I heard about it, I saw a chance to make something right from all that wrong. I couldn't bring David back, but I could save his daughter. Was any of it real?" Sarah's voice rose, tears streaming now. "Or was I just a way for you to sleep at night? A transaction to balance your moral ledger?" "It was real." Alexander stepped toward her, desperate. "Everything between us, it's real. I've fallen in love with you, Sarah. These months watching you with Marcus, learning who you are, seeing your strength and compassion. How can I believe anything you say?" Sarah's voice cracked. "You built this entire situation on a lie. Every moment we've shared, every conversation, every look, tainted by this secret you kept." I know, and I'm sorry. I thought you hired me because you saw something worthwhile in me, but you just saw an obligation, a debt to pay." The truth Sarah needed came in pieces, each one cutting deeper than the last. Had he known who she was during that first diner conversation? Yes. Had he manufactured that encounter? No, he'd truly been there seeking solace. But when she approached, he'd recognized her and seen an opportunity. "So you manipulated me," Sarah said flatly. "No, I was honest about Marcus, about what he needed. That was all real. But you never told me the one thing that mattered most. The money question hit hardest. The medical bills, Emma's surgery. If I leave, they're paid completely, Alexander said quickly. That doesn't change, no matter what. Emma's health isn't contingent on anything. I would never. But that's exactly it. Sarah's voice broke. You have all the power. You always have. I can't separate what's real from what's guilt or obligation or... She couldn't finish. Tears choked her, grief and betrayal and confusion overwhelming everything. I need to go, she managed. I need to think. Sarah, please. Don't. Just don't. She headed for the door, her vision blurred, her chest tight. For what it's worth, Alexander said behind her, his voice wrecked. Everything I said about how I feel. That's real. The guilt brought you here. But love made me fall. Sarah stopped at the door, but didn't turn around. I don't know what's real anymore. She left, closing the door behind her with a soft click that sounded like an ending. Sarah walked blindly through the hallway, vision blurred with tears, mind reeling with revelations that rewrote her entire reality. David's death wasn't just tragedy. It was Alexander's responsibility. The money saving Emma came from the company that killed her father. Everything, the job, the estate, Marcus, built on a foundation of guilt and lies. She needed to pack, needed to leave, needed to... Footsteps, not the quick, efficient steps of staff, not the measured pace of Alexander. Uneven, careful, determined footsteps approaching from behind her. Sarah turned and saw the impossible. Marcus was walking down the hallway toward her. No walker, no support bars, no Nurse Williams hovering nearby. Just Marcus in his pajamas, barefoot, walking completely alone for the first time. His face showed determination mixed with fear, mixed with fierce courage. Each step was an act of will. His body still learning to remember what it had forgotten. 15 feet separated them. He was closing the distance. Marcus, what are you? Sarah started. Stay there, he said, concentration evident in every syllable. I have to do this myself. 10 feet now. 8. He wobbled slightly, caught himself, kept going. 6 feet. Sarah's hands twitched, wanting to reach for him, knowing she couldn't. This was his journey. Marcus, be careful. 4 feet. 3. 2. He reached her, breathing hard from the exertion, and immediately wrapped his arms around her, standing, holding her solid and real in there. Don't leave, he said into her shoulder. Marcus, you don't understand. I heard everything. From the hallway. I heard you and Dad. His arms tightened. I don't care about the accident or the guilt or whatever complicated history you two have. Tears filled his eyes as he pulled back to look at her. You're the person who didn't give up on me when I'd given up on myself. You're the person who made me want to walk again. That's real. Whatever else is complicated, that part is real. Sarah was breaking apart. But your father lied to me about everything. He lied because he was scared. Marcus said with wisdom beyond his 15 years. You know what that's like, being scared. You were scared when you came here, scared of being charity, scared of depending on anyone. But you stayed because of Emma. You pushed through the fear. He held her gaze steadily. Fear makes people lie. It doesn't make their feelings fake. Sarah sobbed openly now. This boy she'd helped save now trying to save her. I don't know what to do, she whispered. You taught me that trying is better than giving up, Marcus said. So try. Try to forgive him. Try to stay. Try to trust. His voice broke on the last word. Please. Movement in her peripheral vision. Alexander emerged from his study, drawn by voices. He stopped dead when he saw his son, standing independently, walking independently for the first time, holding the woman Alexander loved, comforting her, being strong when Alexander had failed to be. Alexander's tears came silently. Everything hit him at once. Pride in Marcus's miracle, Guilt for causing Sarah's pain, love for both of them, fear that he destroyed everything, hope that maybe, somehow, they could survive this. The three of them stood frozen in that hallway. Marcus standing and holding Sarah, Sarah crying and held by the boy she'd saved. Alexander watching his whole world balanced on a knife's edge. "Stay," Marcus said again, looking at Sarah. "Please stay." Sarah looked over Marcus's shoulder at Alexander. Their eyes met across the space, across the hurt, across the impossible complexity of guilt and love and broken trust. Could she forgive? Could she trust? Could she risk her heart again, knowing the very money that saved her daughter came from the tragedy that destroyed her old life? The answer wouldn't come. Not tonight. Maybe not for a long time. But Marcus was standing in her arms, walking on his own, living proof that impossible things could happen when people refused to give up. Maybe that was enough. Maybe that was everything. Or maybe it was just the beginning of a new kind of heartbreak. Sarah's room felt like a cage. She packed, then unpacked, then packed again. Clothes folded and unfolded. Decisions made and unmade. Her mind ran endless loops, trying to process facts that refused to arrange themselves into any configuration that made sense. Fact: David was dead because of Alexander's project. Fact: Emma was alive because of Alexander's money. Fact: Marcus was walking because of her care. Fact: She was in love with a man who'd lied to her from the very beginning. The facts existed simultaneously, contradicting and confirming each other in ways that made her head pound and her chest ache. At midnight, she couldn't help herself. She called home. Mrs. Chin answered, voice thick with sleep. "Sarah, is everything okay? I'm sorry to wake you. Can I talk to Emma? I know it's late, but I need to hear her voice." "Of course, dear. Hold on." Rustling. Then Emma's groggy voice. "Mommy?" "Hi, baby. I'm sorry to wake you. Is something wrong?" Instant alertness. The way children could shift from sleep to worry in a heartbeat. Sarah's throat tightened. "How did you explain moral complexity to a 7-year-old? Do you remember me telling you about the man I work for? The boy's daddy." "The boy's daddy?" "Yes. I found out he was connected to Daddy's accident." Silence on the other end. Then, "Did he make the building fall?" "No, but it was his building, his company. So it's his fault Daddy died?" "I don't know, baby. It's complicated." Emma was quiet for a long moment. Then, with the devastating clarity only children possessed, "Daddy used to say, everyone makes mistakes, even big ones." Sarah's breath caught. "He did say that. Do you think the man is sorry?" "Yes," Sarah whispered. "I think he's very sorry." "Then maybe that's important too." Children cut straight to truth adults spent lifetimes avoiding. Sarah felt tears streaming down her face. "When did you get so smart?" "I've always been smart, Mommy." Their recurring exchange, the one that always made Sarah smile. "I love you, baby. Go back to sleep." But Emma asked the question that mattered most. "Are you coming home?" "I don't know yet." After she hung up, Sarah lay in bed, remembering David. Their last real conversation, 2 days before he died, when he'd still had enough strength to speak clearly. "Promise me something," he'd said, his hand weak in hers. "Anything. Don't let what happens to me make you afraid to live. I love you. When I'm gone, don't stop loving. The world needs your heart, Sarah. Don't close it off." Had she kept that promise? Or had she been closed off, emotionally dead, just surviving until Marcus and Alexander broke through her defenses? As sunrise painted the estate grounds gold and pink, Sarah watched from her balcony. The garden where Alexander had found her after Marcus's 15 steps. The hallway where Marcus had walked alone for the first time. The therapy room where daily miracles happened through simple persistence. This place was no longer just a mansion. Somewhere along the way, it had become home. The question wasn't whether Alexander had made mistakes. He had. Terrible, devastating mistakes. The question was, Could they build something real from broken pieces? Could love grow in the wreckage of tragedy? Sarah didn't know, but maybe not knowing was okay. Maybe trying was enough. Sarah found Marcus in the therapy room after breakfast, stretching carefully. His face showed the soreness of muscles pushed beyond their limits. "I'm paying for showing off last night," he admitted with a rueful grin. "Worth it?" Sarah asked, managing a small smile. "Completely." They went through his exercises in companionable silence until Marcus asked the question that hung between them. "Are you leaving?" "I don't know." "What would make you stay?" Sarah sat on the floor beside him. "Knowing I can trust your father." "Can I tell you something about him?" "Of course." Marcus's expression turned serious. "Older than his 15 years. After my mom left, Dad became different. Careful, controlled, like he couldn't let anyone see he was hurt. He built walls higher than this house." Sarah listened, seeing Alexander through his son's eyes. Then the accident happened. His walls got even higher. "But with you," Marcus met her gaze. "I watched him. He let the walls down. That terrified him. So he hid behind the secret." "Marcus." "I'm not saying it was right. It wasn't. But he didn't lie because he didn't care. He lied because he cared too much and didn't know what to do with it." Sarah felt tears welling again. "How are you so wise at 15? Months of therapy with someone who doesn't BS me." Marcus smiled. "I learned from the best. I cry so much around you too. That's because you feel things. Don't stop. Drop a thumbs up in the comments if you think Sarah should stay, and a thumbs down if you think she should leave. And make sure you're subscribed because the next part of this story will break you in the best way possible." Midday. Sarah requested a meeting. Alexander looked like he hadn't slept, his usual composure replaced by raw exhaustion. "Thank you for agreeing to talk," he said quietly. "We need to." Sarah asked for details about the investigation after the collapse. Alexander explained everything. How the contractor had bypassed inspections, bribed officials, falsified safety reports. How Alexander's company had sued the contractor. How they'd settled with the families, though Sarah hadn't known the source of her portion. "I implemented new safety protocols across all my projects," Alexander said. "Triple inspections, independent verification, criminal background checks on all contractors. It doesn't bring anyone back." "I know that, but I've spent 8 months trying to make sure it never happened again." "Why didn't you tell me from the start?" Sarah asked, getting to the core issue. "Because I'm a coward." Alexander's voice was hollow. "I told myself I'd tell you after Emma's surgery, then after Marcus showed improvement, then after he walked. I kept finding reasons to delay because I was terrified. Terrified you'd look at me the way you looked at me last night, like I'd destroyed everything." Sarah took a shaky breath. "You did destroy something. My ability to see this situation clearly. But you also built something. Marcus's hope, my daughter's health. This, whatever this is between us." "Sarah, I'm angry. I'm hurt. I feel manipulated." She held up a hand as he started to speak. "But I also know what you've given us, what you've risked. I need time. I need space. But I don't need to leave." The relief on Alexander's face was almost painful to witness. "I stay for Marcus," Sarah continued, laying out her terms. "His therapy isn't finished. I stay in a professional capacity. We maintain distance while I figure out what I feel. And you give me honesty, complete honesty. No more secrets." "I agree," Alexander said immediately, "to everything. Sarah, I will earn your trust back, however long it takes." They looked at each other across the study, across hurt and hope, betrayal and possibility. The tension between them was unresolved, complicated, messy, but a path forward existed. "Okay," Sarah said softly. "Let's try." Week 15 felt like walking on eggshells wrapped in ice. Sarah and Alexander maintained careful politeness. "Good morning. How are you? Marcus is doing well. No personal conversations. No lingering looks. Professional distance that felt like miles. Marcus noticed immediately. This is awkward, he muttered during therapy. You two know that, right? But he didn't push. Just continued his work, walking 50 feet with his walker now, building strength daily. Week 16 brought small cracks in the ice. Marcus attempted stairs, 3 steps up, 3 steps down. A triumph that should have been celebrated with joy. Instead, the moment felt muted, dampened by the tension between Sarah and Alexander. This is awkward, Marcus said again, louder this time. You two know that, right? Sarah and Alexander responded simultaneously, sorry, then caught each other's eyes and smiled, just briefly, just a little, but it was the first shared smile in 2 weeks. Progress. Week 17. Dr. Hart pulled Sarah aside after consultation. You're punishing yourself as much as him. What do you mean? You feel guilty for having feelings for him, given the David connection. But that's not betraying your husband's memory, Sarah. That's living. What if I can't separate my gratitude from real feelings? Dr. Hart's expression was gentle. What if they're the same thing? What if gratitude and love grow together? What if they're supposed to? Week 18. Alexander arranged something without telling Sarah. An invitation arrived, a private ceremony for the construction accident memorial he'd commissioned. When Sarah arrived, she found a beautiful granite monument in a small park. 7 names engraved, including David Mitchell's. A scholarship fund established in the victims' names. Just families present, no media, no publicity. Alexander's speech was simple. I can't change what happened, but I can honor their memories by ensuring it never happens again. Sarah watched him take accountability publicly, saw genuine remorse in every word. Afterward, she approached him quietly. Thank you for honoring David. It's not enough. It will never be enough. Alexander's eyes were red. But it's something. It matters, Sarah said, and meant it. Week 19, neither could sleep. They met accidentally in the kitchen at 2 a.m. Sarah making tea, Alexander entering and freezing in the doorway. I can leave, he said. No, stay, please. They talked, really talked, about David, about grief, about moving forward, about the impossibility of untangling complicated feelings. I've been angry at you because it's easier than admitting I have feelings for you despite everything, Sarah said finally. Alexander's breath caught. You don't have to have feelings for me. I don't expect. I know. That's why I do. Silence stretched between them, heavy with possibility. I'm not ready yet, Sarah continued, but I think I might be getting there. I'll wait, Alexander said quietly, as long as you need. Week 20, Marcus walked the entire ground floor of the mansion without his walker, without support, just walking like it was natural. Then he announced, I want to go back to school. Everyone stared in shock. I've been hiding. I don't want to hide anymore. Marcus looked at Sarah. You taught me that trying is better than staying safe. Time to practice what you preach. Plans began for his graduate school reentry, and Sarah realized that healing wasn't linear. It was messy and complicated and happened in fits and starts. But it was happening. Week 21 brought an unexpected development. Dr. Hart arrived at the estate with news. I've been contacted by a medical journal. They want to document Marcus's case. And local news wants to do a human interest story. Marcus didn't hesitate. I want to do it. Marcus, think about this, Sarah cautioned. Media attention. I've thought about it. Other kids are where I was 4 months ago. Doctors telling them it's impossible. Families giving up hope. Maybe this helps them. Alexander looked concerned. Sarah, this would expose you to public scrutiny too. Your privacy. If Marcus wants to share his story, we support him, Sarah said firmly. The news crew arrived 3 days later, transforming the estate into a production set. Marcus demonstrated everything. Walking, climbing stairs, even light jogging that made Alexander grip the doorframe for support. The interviewer, a woman with kind eyes and sharp questions, asked Marcus, "Doctors said you'd never walk again. What changed?" "Sarah changed," Marcus said without hesitation. She saw what was possible instead of what was impossible. The camera turned to Sarah. She felt exposed, uncomfortable, wanting to disappear. "I just showed up." Marcus did all the real work. "She showed up when everyone else gave up," Marcus corrected. That made all the difference. Alexander's interview segment was equally revealing. "What was it like watching your son's recovery?" Alexander looked directly at Sarah, standing off camera. "It was like watching a miracle. Sarah gave us hope when we had none left." The unspoken feelings were painfully clear, captured on camera for thousands to see. The broadcast aired 2 days later. The response was immediate and overwhelming. The phone started ringing before the segment even ended. Emails flooded Dr. Hart's practice. Other families with similar situations, desperate parents who'd been told impossible, children who needed hope. Media requests multiplied by the hour. "We can't help everyone," Sarah said to Alexander that evening, staring at the overflowing inbox. "Why not?" "Because I'm one person." This was Marcus. "It might not work for others." "Or it might," Alexander countered. "Don't we have an obligation to try?" Sarah looked at the emails. Parents begging for help, kids who deserved a chance, families drowning in despair, and realized that Marcus's miracle was never meant to be singular. It was meant to be the beginning. One email stood out from hundreds. Maria Rodriguez, desperate mother from 2 hours away. "Please, I saw what you did for Marcus. My Lily deserves a chance too." Sarah read it 3 times. Lily, age 12, similar injury, 17 months in a wheelchair. Given up by doctors. Working class family. Insurance refused to cover anything experimental. The same story, a different family. "You have to try," Marcus said when Sarah showed him. For her. Sarah and Marcus visited the Rodriguez family. Marcus insisted on coming. Wanted Lily to see proof. The small apartment was crowded with medical equipment, every corner adapted for wheelchair access. Lily sat by the window, pale and withdrawn, her eyes ancient with suffering. Maria Rodriguez looked exhausted from working 3 jobs to keep her daughter fed and medicated. "Insurance won't cover experimental therapy. Doctors say accept reality. But I saw your interview. I saw Marcus walking. If there's any chance." Sarah examined Lily, asking questions, reviewing medical records. The injury pattern was similar to Marcus's. Incomplete SCI, muscle atrophy from disuse, depression suppressing any recovery efforts. "I can't promise miracles," Sarah said honestly. "I'm not a doctor." "I'm not asking for miracles," Maria said, tears in her eyes. "I'm asking for hope." Sarah looked at Marcus, who gave a slight nod. "Okay, let's try." Back at the estate, Sarah approached Alexander hesitantly. "I can't ask you to." "You didn't ask," he interrupted gently. "I'm offering." He covered all of Lily's therapy costs and arranged for her to come to the estate therapy room 3 times weekly. When Maria tried to thank him, crying openly, Alexander said simply, "Because someone gave my son a chance. I'm paying it forward." Lily's first session was brutal. Hostile, defensive, bitter, exactly like Marcus had been. "I've been through this before," Sarah said calmly. "You can't scare me off. I'm not Marcus. It won't work for me." That's when Marcus walked into the room, deliberately for maximum effect. "For months ago, I said the same thing. Guess what? I was wrong." Lily stared at him, really seeing him for the first time. "You really couldn't walk? Really? Couldn't stand, couldn't shift my weight, couldn't do anything. Sarah made me believe I could try. That's all she's asking from you. Just try." Week 1. Lily stood in the standing frame for 30 seconds, trembling with effort but vertical. Week 2. Weight shifting from leg to leg. Her face showing shock when muscles responded. Week 3. First assisted step. Small, shaky, but real. Sarah documented everything, cross-referencing with Marcus's recovery. This was working. It was replicable, not a one-time miracle, but a methodology that could help others. If this story is giving you hope, share this video with someone who needs it. And hit subscribe, because what happens next shows how one waitress's kindness created a movement that would change hundreds of lives. Sarah, Dr. Hart said during one of her visits, "You stumbled onto something significant. You're treating the person, not just the injury, combining physical therapy with emotional support in ways conventional medicine doesn't. This needs to be studied, formalized, scaled." "I don't know how to do that," Sarah protested. "I'm a waitress, remember?" Dr. Hart smiled. "You are a healer. The job title doesn't matter." One evening, Alexander found Sarah in the therapy room, surrounded by notes from dozens of families seeking help. "I want to fund a proper facility," he said, without preamble. Sarah looked up, startled. "What? A place where you can work with multiple patients? Staff, equipment, research capabilities, everything needed to scale what you're doing. That's enormous. I can't run something like that." "You wouldn't be alone. Dr. Hart would come on board as medical director. We'd hire physical therapists, build a proper team. But you'd be the heart of it, your approach, your philosophy." Sarah shook her head, overwhelmed. "This is too much, too big." "Mommy, why are you scared?" Emma's voice came from the tablet propped nearby. She'd been on video call, overhearing everything. "Because I don't know if I could do something this big." "You said you couldn't help Marcus walk either," Emma pointed out with 7-year-old logic. "But you did." Marcus, also present, grinned. "She's got a point." "When did everyone around me get so wise?" Sarah asked, but she was smiling. Later that night, alone in the therapy room where miracles had become routine, Sarah thought about David's last words. "Don't let what happens to me make you afraid to live." She thought about Marcus walking, Lily's first steps, the phones ringing with desperate families. Her phone held messages from people she'd never met, but who needed exactly what she could offer. If not me. If not now, when? Sarah found Alexander in his study. "Okay, let's do it, but on one condition." "Name it." "We name it after David. The David Mitchell Recovery Foundation. Your money, his memory, our work." Alexander's eyes filled with tears. "I'd be honored." The next 6 months were a whirlwind. Renovating warehouse space into a state-of-the-art facility, hiring staff and training them in Sarah's approach, treating patients as people first, injury second. Dr. Hart came on board as medical director, bringing medical credibility. Marcus volunteered every weekend, working with new patients, proof of what was possible. Lily, now walking with a walker, became their second success story. Emma visited often, excited about Mommy's miracle place, already talking about becoming a biomedical engineer to help even more people. Opening day arrived with a small, intimate ceremony. Just families and staff, nothing flashy or corporate. 5 patients enrolled, 5 families given hope. Marcus spoke. "6 months ago, I couldn't walk. Today, I'm running." He demonstrated by jogging across the facility, grinning. "Sarah gave me that. This place will give it to others." Lily also spoke, standing without support. "I was told to accept I'd never walk. Now look, don't accept impossible. Fight for possible." Media coverage followed. Local news becoming regional, then national. Sarah remained uncomfortable with attention, insisting, "This isn't about me." "But you started it," a reporter pointed out. "No, Marcus started it by deciding to try. I just showed up after the ceremony. The facility empty. Sarah and Alexander walked through the space together. "You did this," Alexander said softly. "You created all of this. We did this. I couldn't have done it without you. Not just the money, your support, your faith." A pause, heavy with meaning. "I've been thinking, yes, I think I'm ready to stop being so scared of this, of us." Alexander's breath caught. Ready for what? To try, to trust, to... The door burst open. Marcus and Emma ran in, Emma squealing. "Mommy, Marcus taught me to use the parallel bars." The almost kiss became a family moment. Marcus and Emma laughing, Alexander and Sarah exchanging knowing looks. The moment was interrupted, but the promise remained. They were building something real from broken pieces. A foundation, literal and metaphorical, that honored the past while creating a future. And that Sarah realized was its own kind of miracle. 14 months after Sarah first arrived at the Montgomery estate, the world looked entirely different. The David Mitchell Recovery Foundation had treated 23 patients. 18 showed significant improvement. 12 were walking independently, defying the prognosis that had sentenced them to wheelchairs forever. National media coverage brought attention to Sarah's methods. An NIH grant-funded formal research studies. Dr. Hart published papers in major rehabilitation journals, documenting outcomes that conventional medicine said were impossible. Marcus was back at school full-time, top of his class, already researching pre-med programs for college applications. Lily Rodriguez ran competitive track, her 800-meter times qualifying her for regionals. From wheelchair to medal stand, she told reporters who asked about her recovery. Sarah had completed formal rehabilitation training and certification, though she still approached every patient as a human first, injury second. Some things credentials couldn't teach. Emma was healthy, thriving, best friends with Marcus despite their age difference. Sarah and Alexander had been together officially for 6 months, taking it slowly, building trust brick by brick. When Alexander proposed 3 months ago, Sarah had asked for more time. Just not yet. One afternoon, Marcus found Sarah in the foundation's office reviewing new patient applications. "There's something I want to do," he said. "What's that?" "Go back to where the accident happened. The intersection." His voice was steady but serious. "Face it. Reclaim it." Sarah set down her pen. "That's a big step." "I know. Will you come with me?" "Of course." Marcus studied her face. "You should do it too." "Do what?" "Visit the construction site where your husband died." Sarah's instinctive resistance rose immediately. "Marcus, you helped me face my trauma. Let us help you face yours." The words hung between them, a challenge and an invitation. Sarah thought about David's voice in her memory, telling her not to let fear stop her from living. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay." The anniversary of Marcus's accident arrived with crisp autumn morning air. Sarah, Alexander, Dr. Hart, and Lily formed a support circle at the city intersection where Marcus's life had changed forever. Traffic moved normally around them, commuters rushing to work, completely unaware that this ordinary place held extraordinary meaning. Marcus stood at the corner, looking at the exact spot where the car had T-boned his side. Sarah stayed back, ready but not hovering. Alexander started to move forward, but Sarah caught his hand, squeezed gently. "Trust him." When the light changed, Marcus walked to the center of the intersection. Cars waited at all four corners while he stood in the middle, surrounded by the place of his breaking. He closed his eyes, breathing deeply. The narration of his internal monologue felt like poetry. A year ago, this place meant the end. The end of walking, running, being normal. It meant pain and wheelchairs and everything impossible. It became the dividing line, before and after. But standing here now, on 2 feet, that work, that move, that carry me, it's different. This isn't the place that broke me. It's the place where my real story started. The story of fighting back, of Sarah showing up, of learning I'm stronger than I knew. Marcus opened his eyes and looked up at the clear blue sky. Then he smiled, not bitter, not sad, but genuinely joyful. When the light changed again, he ran, full sprint across the intersection, his body moving with the ease of someone who'd never been told he'd never walk again. Sarah cried watching him. Alexander stood speechless, hand over his heart. Marcus reached the other side and turned back, raising both fists in victory. "You didn't beat me," he shouted across the intersection. Cars honked, not in anger but celebration. Strangers on the sidewalk, some who recognized him from news coverage, started clapping. Marcus ran back across when the light changed, straight to Sarah. "Thank you," he said, breathing hard but grinning. "For teaching me I could do that." "You always could," Sarah said through tears. "You just needed to believe it." They hugged, all of them, in a group embrace of people who'd walked through fire together. Lily wiped her eyes and said, "My turn next month. The park where I fell." A tradition was being born, reclaiming trauma sites, transforming places of pain into monuments of triumph. 3 days later, it was Sarah's turn. The completed building rose against the afternoon sky. Montgomery Tower South, gleaming glass and steel. No trace of the tragedy that had occurred during its construction. But at the entrance, a memorial plaque honored the 7 workers who died. David Mitchell's name was engraved second from the top. They built the foundation upon which we stand. Their sacrifice ensures our future safety. Sarah stood at the edge of the property, physically shaking. She hadn't been here since it happened, had avoided this entire neighborhood for over a year. Nausea rose in her throat. Panic tightened her chest. Alexander stood beside her. "We can leave. You don't have to." "No." Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. "I need to." Emma took her mother's hand. "It's okay, Mommy. Daddy's watching." Marcus positioned himself on Sarah's other side. Alexander followed behind, supported but making the journey herself. Sarah walked toward the plaque. Her fingers touched the engraved letters of David's name. The memories flooded through her, their first date, his terrible jokes, their wedding day, Emma's birth, the hospital bed, the funeral she couldn't afford. The grief was still present, would always be present, but it felt different now. Grief with gratitude for the time they'd had. Sarah spoke aloud, her voice carrying to her family and to the husband she'd lost. "I kept your promise. I didn't let losing you stop me from living. I found love again. I hope that's okay." Her voice cracked. "Emma's healthy, strong. She's so much like you. I'm helping people. The way you always help people. You'd like Alexander and Marcus. They need us. We need them." Tears streamed down her face. "I'll always love you. That doesn't go away. But I'm letting myself love them too. Because you told me to. Thank you for setting me free." Sarah closed her eyes and imagined David, not as he'd been dying, but as he'd been living, vibrant, laughing, full of life. She heard his voice in her memory, as clear as if he were standing beside her. "That's my girl. Go build your life." When she opened her eyes, she turned to face Alexander, Marcus, Emma, Dr. Hart, her people, her family. "I'm ready," she said. Alexander's breath caught. "For what?" Sarah smiled through her tears. "Everything." She looked directly at Alexander. "You asked me something 6 months ago." Understanding flooded his face. He couldn't speak, could only wait. "My answer is yes." "Wait, what?" Marcus said. "Are you getting married?" Emma squealed. Alexander's face transformed with joy. He nodded, still unable to find words. "We're getting married," Sarah confirmed. Emma and Marcus erupted in excited screams. Dr. Hart cried happy tears. Again, always again with his family. Sarah and Alexander kissed. Their first real kiss, uninterrupted, meaningful. At the sight of Sarah's greatest loss, they chose their new beginning. Poetic and painful and perfect. The 5 of them stood together at the memorial to the past, looking toward a future they would build together. A family not born but chosen, not perfect but real. David's memory honored. Alexander's guilt transformed into purpose. Sarah's heart healed enough to love again. From brokenness, beauty. From tragedy, hope. From endings, new beginnings. The David Mitchell Recovery Foundation's 3rd anniversary gala filled the main facility with celebration. 3 locations now served patients across the state. 200 people treated. 78% showing significant improvement outcomes that rewrote rehabilitation medicine textbooks. Sarah's methods were being taught in medical schools nationwide. Dr. Hart had published 3 books on trauma-informed rehabilitation, crediting Sarah in every dedication. The NIH longitudinal study confirmed what they'd known from the beginning. Treating the person, not just the injury, changed everything. Marcus, now 19 and a college sophomore, stood at the podium in his pre-med program hoodie. 3 years ago, 17 specialists told me I'd never walk. Tonight, I'm telling you that specialists don't know everything. Hope and hard work, no more. The crowd applauded. Marcus volunteered at the foundation every weekend, mentoring new patients, living proof that impossible was just an opinion. Lily Rodriguez, 15 and fierce, spoke next. I went from wheelchair to medal stand, regional champion in the 800-meter. Your impossible might just be your beginning. Alexander and Sarah, married for 2 years now, sat at the head table with their family of 6, Emma, Marcus, and the twins they'd adopted from foster care, Grace and Matthew, both with disabilities, both thriving under Sarah's care. Sarah still refused a purely administrative role, insisting on working directly with patients. Alexander had stepped back from daily business operations to chair the foundation board, finally understanding that presence mattered more than empire building. Emma, 11 years old and healthy, was already designing adaptive equipment prototypes. I want to be a biomedical engineer, she told anyone who asked. I want to build things that help people like Marcus and Lily. Dr. Hart stood near the back, watching her life's work validated, thinking about the waitress who'd stumbled onto medical breakthroughs through stubbornness and compassion. The foundation had expanded beyond anyone's initial vision. 3 locations, plans for 5 more, training programs for therapists nationwide, research partnerships with major universities. And at the center of it all, Sarah Mitchell Montgomery, former waitress, widow, healer, who'd never stopped believing that showing up mattered. The MC called Sarah to the stage. She climbed the steps reluctantly, still uncomfortable with attention after all this time, still insisting this wasn't about her. But the standing ovation that greeted her said otherwise. Sarah stood at the microphone, waited for the applause to die down, and spoke with the honest directness that defined her. I'm not good at speeches. I'm better at showing up and doing the work. Laughter rippled through the crowd. 3 years ago, I was a widowed waitress with a sick daughter and no hope. A billionaire offered me a deal. Help his son walk again. I thought it was impossible, but I took the deal because I had no choice. She paused, looking at her family in the front row. Turns out, not having a choice was the best thing that happened to me. We helped 200 people here, but we could help 2,000, 20,000. Every week I get emails from families doctors have given up on. Kids told they'll never run. Adults told they'll never stand. We're proving that wrong, one person at a time. Sarah's voice strengthened. But here's the real secret. I'm not special. I don't have magic powers. I don't have a medical degree. I just refused to accept impossible as an answer. And I showed up. Every single day I showed up. That's what I'm asking from all of you tonight. Show up for people who need you. Don't give up when it's hard. Believe in possibilities everyone else has dismissed. That's how Marcus learned to walk. That's how Lily runs track. That's how hundreds of people we've helped reclaim their lives. Not through miracles, through showing up. Her voice softened with emotion. This foundation bears my late husband's name, David Mitchell. David taught me that helping people is never wasted effort. Even when you can't save them, showing up matters. I couldn't save David, but I could help Marcus and Lily and so many others. That's David's legacy. That's all our legacy. Showing up, not giving up, believing in possible. The crowd rose as one, applause thundering. Marcus whistled. Emma cried proud tears. Alexander mouthed, I love you. Sarah looked at her family and thought, this is home. Late that night, after the gala ended and guests departed, Sarah walked through the empty foundation, the parallel bars where Marcus took his first step, the standing frame where it all began, photos covering the walls, every patient's journey from impossible to possible. Thinking about old times, Marcus appeared in the doorway, unable to sleep either, remembering how far we've come. We made it, didn't we? Yeah, kid, we made it. Marcus moved to stand beside her. Thank you for not giving up on me. Thank you for not giving up on yourself. What would you have done if I never walked? Sarah didn't hesitate, kept showing up anyway. That was always the promise. That's what made the difference. They looked at the wall displaying future goals. Expansion plans, new patients starting next week, research studies launching, Marcus's medical school applications, Emma's engineering dreams. The work never stopped. The purpose continued. Alexander entered carrying sleeping twins. Found these two trying to sleep in the gym. The family gathered in the space built from tragedy and hope, living proof that endings could become beginnings. Sarah's final thought carried the weight of everything they'd survived and built. 14 months ago, carrying a breakfast tray down a marble hallway, I didn't know how the story ended. Now I know it doesn't end. It evolves. It expands. It multiplies. Every person helped helps another. Every healed heart heals others. That's not just Marcus's miracle. It's ours. And it's just beginning. The family stood silhouetted against the foundation windows, lights glowing warm against the night. Through the glass, David Mitchell's memorial plaque was visible in the courtyard. Past and future, loss and hope together. From a diner booth conversation to a movement that changed hundreds of lives. From impossible to inevitable. From showing up to building legacy. If this story moved you, inspired you, or made you believe in the power of just showing up, leave a comment telling me about a time someone showed up for you. Share this video with someone who needs hope today. And subscribe to this channel because there are more stories like this that prove ordinary people can create extraordinary change. Your like and share might be exactly what someone needs to hear today. Thank you for being here.